Hello YouTube, this is Mike here. Today we're going to put this 125 on the bench, and it's the same as the 135 as far as the quadro trigger and the safety and all this stuff that goes on that you got to take apart in order to get into your receiver. So I know that's daunting when you look at all that and you go, oh my God. Well, today I'm going to go over this with you so hopefully you can understand it clearly. And then also, if you run into some problems, you'll be able to know what to do with them. And so you can get in and out of your rifle and then get around the problems. And also, I'm going to make it easy for you. So give you a detailed look into what you're going to run into and what to do when you run into it. Okay, so let's get started. Well, like I said, it's a 125 on the bench. They happen to be my favorite. The stock's off, so when you take your stock off, if you never took a stock off, go back to the Hatsan 95 videos that I already have up, the 4 clips, and it'll show you what to do to take your stock off. And you could run into problems just trying to get your stock off. So refer to that video for that, as well as tuning the quadro trigger, working it, and all that stuff, and putting it back, and how to take the quadro trigger apart when you do go to take it apart. So with all that said, let's get into this here. And so one side here you have the safety that goes right off your shoe back to the side of your trigger block, right? And then you got your spring, and then on the other side you have most of everything. You got all this stuff over here. See it? And including the part that these two can connect. Everything's basically over here. But to get to this, you got to start somewhere, and that's going to be the other side. So let's get rolling here, and I'll show you how to do this. It's not complicated. I know it looks complicated, but the thing with these Hatsans is you can really run into a lot of little problems, and if you're not used to working on them, you know, you're just going to be pulling your hair out. So undo this loop here for your spring, open it up. Take a small screwdriver and a pair of needle nose. Use the screwdriver to open up the loop. And then once you get it open, you can use the needle nose to hold the spring like this to maintain the spring's integrity. Otherwise, the spring's going to get all whacked out, and you don't want to do that. So this will hold it from getting twisted, and you can pry this screwdriver between this and the end of the spring and work the 2 tools to spread the end of the loop, and you'll get something like that out of the deal. So once you do that, then break your barrel open. And then once your barrel's broken open, your safety will slide back and take up all that slack that the spring was, the spring's no longer taut. And just take your spring off, just like that, and leave the other end connected. And then go back, close your barrel, like that. And then take and pull your sear pin right here. That's your trigger sear pin. Pull that, get one of your trigger punches. Basically, you should have a whole set of punches. Get the punch that's just under the size of that, and tap that pin out. Then you have another pin right here. Slide that back and all the way down flush with the trigger block so that it's not going to catch on this. Now this is ready to slide out, but you may have the 125 where the trigger bracket are too tight and the little spring loop is going to interfere with this. So if that's the case, you need to get this here and slide it out. Just take your punch and easily slide that out like that. Now once this is out, slide this back up and try to teeter the top. They're stiff when they're brand new. Work and teeter the top over like that. Then when you go to put it back, put the top on first and then snap the bottom in. But right now you teeter the top over. You have to work it like this and she'll come off. Yours comes off differently, go for it. So now this side's done. Now the Quadrant trigger has all these pins, and the pins slide in and out on both sides. All the trigger pins will go right through, and there is one pin on here that only goes on one way and it can't go out, and that's this one. Anyway, now you have this flat, this is out, this side's done now. You can flip around to the complicated side. And it's not really complicated, it just looks complicated. So this is what you have here. And let's go talk about it real quick before you go pull it apart. And now I have the trigger engaged, because that's when I put the trigger back and the safety's on. So let me get rid of that and I'll fire this and get rid of that. Anyway, what you have here is you have your safety plate. This is a safety plate. There's two plates, one on top of each other. You have your little spring that connects the two plates. Then you have the thumb part right here, and that is attached to the plate, right? And then you have this little Y guy. You'll see this is a Y figure. Don't worry, my trigger just fell out. This rifle on the bench is a mock-up. Nothing's been done to it. But the Y figure goes like that, and when the trigger's in, when it's on safety, it can't fire now because the Y is blocking the trigger from coming down. When it's off safe, there, it's clear and the trigger can fire. So basically you have your trigger. Let me put that back so it looks like yours does. When the pins are lubed and all that, they usually will stay in place unless you bang them. So anyway, you got a Y figure here, and it goes down into this double-plated safety, right? And the safety moves the Y back and forth under the trigger or away from the trigger. Then there's this little retaining clip, and the retaining clip grabs this pin that's for the Y. The Y pin has a groove, and the retaining clip has a hook that you can see, and the hook just goes in the groove. There's another pin. That's the trigger pin again. Just wants to fall out. There's no lube. Let me put some lube on it. Anyway, this retaining clip centers on this pin here, and that's closest to the barrel. It's going through and holding this, what we call the half moon piece in. And they did away with that half moon on some of the different rifles, maybe on the 125s even, I'm not sure, but some of them did away with that and they just have a pin there now. At any rate, this clip comes back and it goes on top of this safety, and the tit that's on this safety has to ride back and forth underneath this. And what this clip does is, number one, it keeps this Y figure in place, doesn't pop off now, and number two, it keeps the safety where it needs to be. So if you put the safety on, then the safety plate's not going to docile back past this clip, because it can on its own. It has to be physically pushed back past that clip. So that way it just keeps your safety in check, so when you're walking around with your gun, it doesn't do what it wants to do and hang up on you. So that's all that does. Anyway, now we're going to take this side apart, and the first thing you're going to do is take this clip off. All it does is wrap all the way around like this and catches this, like that. So you just pull it out like this, out and above, and then here where the Y is, just go like that, disengage it and pull it off, okay? And this is what the other end looks like. It's just got a little hook, like that. It only goes on one pin, and only goes on the pin closest to the barrel. So when you put it on that pin, it lays itself out, and the hook can only catch one thing, and that's the pin with the groove. Just like that. And then you take this and swing it back around on top and over, and that clip is doing its job and you're done. So let's take it off. We'll get back into this. Take it off and put it down. Now as soon as you do that, this pin here for the Y right there is usually going to drop to some degree. If it doesn't, just push it down and pull it out from behind. Get it out of there. And you'll see the groove on it. And on the other side is a flat spot, because this is the only pin that doesn't slide back and forth. So put that aside. Now you have this pin. This pin goes here, and it's absolutely a must that when you put this Y figure in, that this pin goes between the forks of that Y. So if you put the Y back and the forks are not between this Y, then you've done something wrong. So now you push this down, you can slide this out. There you go. And there's your tail to Y. So get that out of the way. Next you have this pin, which you slid over here when you were moving this side of the safety. So slide it back this side, all the way down and flush with the trigger block. Like that. Okay? So now you got this pin's out of your way, this pin's gone, and this pin's been pushed back, so you have clearance here. If your design here is proper, then you should be able to slightly teeter this up and away this way. But before you do that, you got to pull this pin, which is holding your thumb safety. Okay? So see that pin? Pull that. That's what teeters through here and keeps that in place. So let's get that pin out. And just real skinny, it looks like that. So now this is a little looser, but they're still connected and they're still going to jam up on you. So now you're going to try to get it out. And it depends how your rifle is made. You may or may not get it out like this. Because it depends on the trigger brackets between the block on each side, if they're tight or if they've been spread apart from the factory. Some models are. They give you more room now. Some don't. Anyway, if it doesn't, if you can't get this out and slide it out, up and out like this, like I'm doing here, and work your way down like this and out. If you can't do that, then don't worry about it. Now, I'm going to put this back and tell you what you can do. Now, if you couldn't do that, and there's a good chance that you might not be able to, right here, see if you, this here, where it catches through the safety, if that's hooked around and starts to come back like a hook, straighten that out. And then just take and physically push them apart and get it out of there. It doesn't take much to get them apart. And then pull that out of there. This only goes on one way. It all faces away from the rifle barrel. Like that. This here faces away from the rifle barrel. This hooks up onto that hook right there. I'm doing it with one hand, that's why it looks so funny. So that basically, you can see what that does. So if you couldn't get this out like that, don't worry about it. Take this apart, get it out of your way, and get it out of there. Now you got this guy. Okay? Now, there's a good chance this isn't going to come out. And if you can't get this out, what it does is you teeter it out and up like this. like that. Just teeters down and in. There's a good chance you won't be able to get that out. And if you can't, don't worry about it. All you do then is go to the next step, and that would be pulling the quadrant trigger bracket pin, which is the first one towards the barrel and then the middle pin. So go ahead and pull it. Look, the whole goal is you're trying to get into your receiver. So I am trying to bring you to the place where you're trying to get to. And this is the first thing you're going to run into. So if that's the case, and you can't get this off, the next resort is to pull the pins. First pin towards the receiver, towards the barrel for the quadrant trigger bracket, and then the middle pin. The bracket comes down, looks just like this. This is where your sear pin went in. So it's these two pins for the bracket. So you got one, and then go for the next one. And there you go. Now, if you have a brand new gun that's never been into before, it's going to be really stiff in there. So you're going to have to jerk it back and forth and wiggle it and try to break it free and work it loose like this. And then you take the whole piece out. Now, remember now you got the bracket here, and then everything went between the bracket and then down inside here, right? So let's look at this. The reason why you couldn't teeter this out let's get it in here. Let's go. Let's just show you something. The reason you couldn't teeter this bracket out, because when you pull this safety, now mine's been taken care of already. I went and slid that pin back. So I need to get that pin out of there. The reason you couldn't take this out and up like this, right? And remember, we took the pin that was here and it's out, and this one's been pushed back down. It went for the Y fork. So these pins are out of your way. The reason you couldn't do that is because under here, this two-part safety plate, and it goes like that. This has a notch right there, and it swings back and catches this tit. Okay? And that holds it together, and then the two pins go through and complete it. But the reason you couldn't pull it up is because this tit is actually, on your rifle, probably too far this way. I had the same problem, so all you do is you grind it back down once you get it off. And then you'll be able to go down to your gun here. Watch out for that hole there, because you don't want the tit to catch into that hole. And you just go down next to it, just like that, see? And then you kind of snap it in. Like that. See it? The tit that you ground down, because it was too long, needs to overhang this plate. I don't know if you can see that if you're picking that up. So just don't grind it down and walk away. It needs to be overhanging this plate some. Ideally, you would like to have it so when you get this on the trigger block, and it's right here at this point between wedging in on the bracket and between that and the trigger block, that you got to snap it in a little bit. That's ideal, because this tit's supposed to go inside the trigger block on this slit here, inside this slit area. Okay? Anyway, that's what you do. If you couldn't get yours off and you had to pull the whole thing, when you do get it off, look at that tit and see if that tit was not too long right here. If it is, just take it down, smooth it out, and take some of it off. And then try it again. Try to get it down in here, slide it in there, and it should snap in. If it's a little tight, that's fine. You'll hear a little snap. But there's a little thing here also, and that is when you stick these Quadro triggers blocks back in, you can actually get some play between one side and the other. So in other words, if I was to stick the screwdriver here, I can actually work and manipulate that trigger just a wee bit, and she'll just slightly get manipulated. Now, well, she's pulling that away now, but now she'll snap a little bit better. At any rate, take that out. If yours is tits too big, grind it down some, but don't grind it down all the way. Leave some going past this tit here. And ideally, again, is so that it drags on the trigger block when you go to put it back. But it doesn't. You don't want it so it fights you, but you want it to drag and kind of be wedgy, and where you have to snap it in. Okay, and that's where you would like it. So that's the whole deal with that. All right, now before we get any further, you're going to want to know how to put this back, because it just looks like one big menagerie. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take this whole thing and put it back. Okay. Now, just for the record, the trigger's been fired. So if you're working on this, and you pull that sear pin out, this is all going to have to be pulled out and reset. Just to let you know that, okay? But what I'm doing here is just to show you when you're at the point and you reset your trigger and it's all ready to go back, and you put the trigger block in, then I'm trying to show you where do you take it from there and how to get all the safety stuff back. But look, since we're here and we're at the trigger, I'm going to do this real quick, and we're on camera, and then we're going to reset all this, okay? Because this sear is no longer in place. It's just dangling. So let's pull this pin. These are all good. We didn't touch them. Now this is the bottom sear and the middle sear here. They have to get engaged like that. All the way engaged, all the way back. And then, if you would have watched the other video, you would have known you needed to make a trigger pin. The trigger pin is designed to go where the main sear is, and just reach just past both sides of the bracket. And the reason you make that is so you can put this all back, and the pin is inside here now, inside between the bracket walls, where the regular pin would just not let you put the trigger back because it's too big and long. Okay? So you need to make a smaller pin that's smaller than the regular trigger pin, and it only has to be long enough to get on both sides of this block here. And that's so you can put this mess back and get it back in your gun. Take a drill bit and cut it down, then bevel the edges. At any rate, here's what happens here. These guys are still in place, right? Nothing was touched. The trigger did fall off, but we put it back. This is still sprung. So now you just got to put this back so you can get it back in your gun. Just for the sake of this video, basically you put these together and make sure they're fully engaged. If you had the sear and it dangled and it fell off, just reconnect it. If it does, don't worry about it. Reconnect it to the spring loop. Once it's in there in the block, it won't disconnect. And then when you go to put this part either in or take a part out, nothing gets pushed through the bottom. The bottom's going to be squeezed more. Leave it alone. That's the way it's supposed to be. The sides will be open more and the top will be open more. They're for your actual trigger pieces. Take this here, make sure it's all the way back, and slide it back. You're going to slide it through this way and just catch the two sears like this. And it looks just like this. Just slide it back and just lift it up enough to catch it. If you catch it too much, this hole's going to disappear on you when you go to stick your tapered pin in, and then you won't be able to catch your hole. And then put your finger back and pull the sear down to put your pin in that you made. Okay? Give it a little wiggle. And now you're all set to go. You're actually engaged, you're ready to fire, and your pins are all in, and now you can put it back. So now you know how that has to go. Refer to the other videos for working on your trigger, okay? Oh, there is one more thing, but I don't know if we really want to go there. It's when you stick the main piece in. The 95 trigger is slightly different. Does have the Y, And it has that. Well, you'll be able to get it through the whole 95 info on the trigger information. You'll be able to work this detail out. Anyway, now we're dropping it down and put a little lube on this. Remember I said the bottom is slightly squeezed. It's supposed to be that way. The sides isn't and the top isn't. Don't play with that. And don't pull anything through it or away out of it. Drop it through and make sure you don't fire your trigger. Be very careful. And then you're going to think you're in the bottom, settled all the way. Look and see, look through the holes and see what it looks like. See if you can see through there. And then you can always take a tapered punch and squeeze it in there like that and pull. And then put one of your pins in, lube it. Make sure the ends are beveled. Put some lube on the pin and put it back. When you tap that pin in, you're going to need to cup these Quadro trigger pins because that little bit of pouncing will cause these to vibrate out. So I'm going to cup the pins, tilt it over, and tap that in, right? Get the next pin wherever the bevel is and lube that up. You might want to use your taper pin again, right? Stick that in there and see if that feels right. These guns are funny. They're not perfect. They have their ways that can drive you up a wall if you're not used to them. Right? And then make sure they're even with the end of the receiver. I cup the pins again. So now your trigger is put back. The sears are engaged, right? One's holding the other in place. We're going to put all this mess back. And we're going to do it easy. Take this pin, if it's there, and just slide it back to the block so that's all clear. This pin here, that's in the way too. Bring that down flush. Okay? Take your plates and lube them up. Lube both sides up. Just lube all the sides and engage them. Now this notch right there is what this Y, when this is in position like this, is what this Y tail drops into. And when this moves, it moves the Y tail. Okay? So that's what this is being caught by. Anyway, put some lube on there, put some lube on your plates. Everything's lubed up, correct? Put a little lube here if you want. You can always take the excess off. Bring it down, watch the tit, that it doesn't go in this little hole. Otherwise it's just going to jam, and slip it down next to it rather, over here. And just slip it down in there. Like that. Now my safety just came apart, so I'm going to put it back together again. Okay? Try to hold the plates with the same thumb when you're pushing down so that they're together, and that won't happen. At any rate, now you got your Y. Inspect your Y, make sure there's no shards of metal coming this way or that way that's going to be grinding on your block that shouldn't be there, right? And then remember, there's the tail and there's the Y fork. The tail goes down into this notch in here. The safety slides back and forth, so you can slide the notch that's in the safety in front and just below that hole there. That'll get you in position. And just drop the Y down in there, like this. And then line everything up. Line that hole up with the pin that's going to come through. Okay? Now if you have it in right, what are you going to have? This pin right here is going to be between the Y fork there. If you don't see that, then you have it in wrong. Anyway, now grab the pin that had the groove, and the pin that only went on one way. From the back side, stick it through. And if I hold this piece and show you, there's only this hole here available, no other hole. Stick it through that hole. And push the pin all the way up. So now what do you got? You got the safety. The Y is in the notch of the safety plates, and the fork of the Y figure is between this pin, and you're good. Make sure this pin on the Y is all the way up. Hold it with your finger. Get your retaining clip just like this, right? And it goes on this pin on closest to the barrel. We call this the half moon piece. So it goes like that. There's the spring loop. Go like that. Get it in there. Turn it in there so the hook catches the groove. Then swing this back and over the safety plate. And it's just like this. Right? You get take two hands would be nice. And then grab this and swing it over. And now you're done. That part's done. Right? You're caught on the groove. It's holding the Y in place. The Y's right and the fork's between this pin. Your trigger's still engaged. At this point, you can, this pin here, slide it back between the plates. Okay? Now these plates at his point, since the pin's there, is going to be stable. This one still takes the sear, and that's going to come last. But right now this will keep everything in place. So at this point, you can do whatever you want to do. You can put the this guy back. And I'm going to put a little bevel on this. Because actually it's the one pin that they don't bevel, and it's a bit of a pain. That'll make it a lot easier because that can be a pain. Well, you got this here, and all you do is turn it so you can see that hole. And this goes out away from your rifle. That's what your thumb hits. And then you just line this hole with that hole. Just like this. Bring it in. If it's hitting here, just go underneath of it and then bring it in, okay? And then I'm going to stick a little lube on my pin that I just lightly chamfered and beveled. Like that, and stick it down and through. Probably just messed it up. Yep. Let's pull it back out. It's no big deal. What you need to do is really look straight down. And I got between cameras and these lamps that are in my way, it's really not conducive to me being able to see what I'm doing. So it's there again, it's out. The other thing with the Hatsan is you need to be patient. So like I say, if that's hitting, tuck it under and then bring this around and through. And there we go. And then once your pin's in, just make it even on both sides. I think you can see that.